Hello everyone, and welcome to another episode of stories, or short stories here on the Learning Droid. Thump, thump, thump. At first I wasn't sure if the sound that pounded through my skull was my blood pumping through my veins, or someone beating on my head with a baseball bat. But as my ability to think slowly began to reform, the fuzzy thoughts slowly reassembling themselves, I finally managed a coherent train of thought for a second. Someone wasn't pounding on my head. Things wouldn't be getting more clear if they were. But the sound wasn't my blood pulsing through my veins either. It was coming from the outside of my head, somewhere nearby. One hand slipped up to run through the short brown hair as I forced myself up out of bed, clawing for a robe to pull around my shoulders. Of course I had been in bed. I remembered falling into it the night before. I kicked aside one of the empty cans that littered my bedside as I pushed myself through my home. It was a little place, a cramped little terrace house, the ground floor given over entirely to a kitchen-living room combo. A stairway led up the left-hand wall to a combined room on the second floor where my bedroom and bathroom took up the entire space. The final floor was my attic, a windowless little place I kept for my more questionable hobbies. I stumbled down the staircase, clutching to the little banister and blinking up at the mottled glass on my front door. A silhouette stood there, and suddenly the thumping filled my head again. It made me feel like my brain was rattling around inside my skull. I'm coming, I yelled. Well, sort of. The sounds were a little roughly formed. It was the first time I'd spoken that day, so cut me a little slack, all right? The thumping stopped, and I tugged my dressing gown tighter around my body, pulling the rope closed and tying a quick knot as I stumbled over to the door. I paused with my hand on the latch, my brain slowly nudging itself into gear and asking me why I was opening the door to a stranger in the middle of the night without any precaution at all. I'm not saying that I'm a marked man, but, well, it's kind of true, I suppose. There are plenty of things in this world, things that exist outside of normal people's experience, that would love to get their claws into me. With that in mind, I reached into the umbrella stand beside my door and wrapped my hand around the solid steel machete I had tucked away there. I tugged open the door, keeping myself half hidden behind it. As I looked around the door edge, fingers wrapped tightly around the cool leather of my machete handle. My head thumped harder than before, but to understand why, you have to know who was at my door. His name was Mike. At least that's what he always got called. If that was his real name, I haven't got a clue. He was about 14, shorter than me by about a foot. He had dirty skin and clothes, wearing brown, slightly ragged layers. He was a street kid and did jobs for Father Nicholas, one of the local priests, in exchange for being allowed to sleep in the church on cold nights. Now, you must understand there is magic in this world. No. Stop rolling your eyes. Just for a second and listen. There is magic in this world, real magic, not parlor tricks or sleight of hand. I'm talking about the sort of magic you hear about in stories and legends. Now, magic comes in all sorts of types, and I can't really explain them all right at this moment. It'd be more than my life's worth, for one thing. But let's just say that some things contain a natural inherent magic, and with a little knowledge we can enhance that and make it more useful and more immediate. With this in mind, my fingers slipped from the machete onto an iron rod kept beside it. All along the length, symbols had been engraved into the iron, and I drew it out of the umbrella stand with a kind of false confidence, offering it through the doorway to the young man who stood on the other side. Take the stick and say your name. I'm not a magus, you understand. Couldn't have made an iron rod like that myself, or flung fire in the face of my enemy. Hence the machete. But I just know a few useful people and called in a favor a while back to get hold of this. Mike rolled his eyes. Come on, Adam, Father wants you. I haven't got time to be playing 20 questions with you. But despite the urgent tone, I proffered the stick again. Little wiggle of the wrist, nudging the rod towards him. a dark determination in my eyes, or at least the one eye that was peeking around the door. Mike grabbed the iron rod and winced. I could feel it too, a kind of biting cold that crept up your arm after taking hold of the metal. "My name's Mike." He went to let go, but I caught him with another question, his hand locking back onto the rod. "Who sent you?" My voice ringing with a kind of command, the sort of voice that makes people obey. It wasn't just magic, just a lot of practice and determination. Kind of like sword steel, something you hone rather than something that is just there. Mike flinched, but said calmly, "Father Nicholas sent me to retrieve a man known as Adam on urgent business for the church." His eyes glaring at me with impatience and annoyance. I'd always found the deep brown eyes a little bit disturbing, to be fair. I sighed and nodded, pulling the rod back and dropping it into the umbrella stand. "No need to get lippy. On the couch, then. I'll go get some clothes on." I stumbled back downstairs a couple of minutes later, feeling a bit more human. I'd grabbed some painkillers while I was upstairs. A long career of drinking away nightmares had trained me to keep a packet and bottle of water beside my bed. I was wearing a black t-shirt and a pair of thick blue jeans, heavy workman boots with steel toe caps, which thumped out their own loud announcement on the stairs as I came down. Only made my head twinge a little, though. I spotted Mike rolling the iron rod between his fingers, eyes scanning over the etched symbols. "Haven't I told you not to play with things? You handed it to me before. It's obviously not that dangerous. Are you ready to go yet?" he asked without looking up from the rod. I'm sure he was enchanted by the mystique and mystery. After all, if you lie while holding it, agony shoots up your arm and you can't help but show it. No doubt he was confused as to how it worked and wanted to know. I wasn't going to tell him. "Yeah, I'm ready." I pulled the duffel bag out from under the stairs and slung the strap over my shoulder. "So what does Father Nicholas think is so important I need to be dragged out to the church at..." I glanced at the clock on one of my bookshelves. 3 in the morning? Mike shrugged his shoulders and some of the dirt on his jacket cascaded onto my nice clean floor. "Not a clue, just told to fetch. That's all I'm interested in." He grinned. "Best way to stay safe around you freaks is to keep what I know to a minimum." Father Nicholas was one of 4 priests caring for an old-school church in the centre of town. It took up half a block to itself, if you include the dormitories and the kitchen at the back. It was a big old imposing building, with shining stained glass windows that twinkled out their candle-lit beauty through the night, and reflected the majesty of the sun during the day. At least, that's what the tourist website for the city said. The Church of St. Joan, patron saint of soldiers, warriors, and protectors. The least I can say is that Father Nicholas took the last of those very seriously, and his hands had touched many lives as a protector. Mine included, in fact, when I ended up at his door with a foot-long piece of rebar through my shoulders. Though that's a different story. I was ushered into the church's back doors by Mike, and Nicholas met me there. He was an elderly man, late 60s at a guess, though I'd never asked. But despite that energy flowed from him. He was dressed in a neatly pressed black shirt and trouser combo, and his hair was neatly combed, his eyes alight and active. "Ah, yes, John. Welcome, come." He was a little manic this morning, and ushered me into a chair. "I was hoping I could get your insight on something." My face went flat. "It's 3. I checked my watch. 30 in the morning, Father. As much as I am ever your servant for what you did to save me years ago, a man needs his rest." "Your hangover can wait," came the blunt response. I glanced at Mike and raised an eyebrow. "Don't ask me, Chief. He's the one who wanted you. I just do the legwork." Nicholas slipped from the room. When Nicholas returned, I had ensconced myself in a small, slightly softer chair beside the scrubbed wooden table, and was in a half-doze. I hadn't fallen asleep, I was resting my eyes, you understand. It didn't really help my nerves, anything, when the heavy steel plate slammed into the desk. "Jesus Christ, Father, give a man a warning." I got a bit of a disapproving look and smirked. "Sorry, sorry, Jesus Christ, amen, Father," I said, my lips turning up at the corner. "Will you ever be a man of God, John?" I couldn't help but laugh, even as my eyes started to take in the details of the round steel disc that had disturbed my rest. "I'm too familiar with the demons of this world to change my mind now, Father." The disc was just shy of 10 inches across and carved with a series of complex symbols. As said, I was neither magician nor magus, but I knew my way around most of the symbols of that world, knew how to read at least 3 versions of artificate script. It was kind of needed when you dealt with creatures from that end of the spectrum. Most of them don't know English. "Where did you get this?" My eyes slowly followed the symbols, taking in each one's meaning, and then stopped before moving on to the next. You wanted to be careful with reading artificate script. Sometimes there were traps laid in the text, and not just rude words that would disturb your mind. Some of the words written in artificate could burn your sanity from you entirely. Whether or not you understood them, reading them was enough. It was found on the body of a murdered schoolgirl about 4 days ago. I just managed to have it moved into my custody as an artifact expert. I was listening, honestly, but the symbols on the disc took a lot of concentration, so if I listened and then forgot immediately what he said, perhaps you might forgive me the occasional slip. The silence dragged on, and I could feel Mike and Nicholas leaning closer, eager for me to say something, but I had to finish the script in front of me before I was ready to give anything. Once I'd finished, I kind of wished I hadn't. I looked over at Mike. "You're too young for this, and you want to be kept in the dark, so out." Mike shrugged and sauntered from the room. I knew he'd be listening from some crack or keyhole or vent somewhere, but at least I could pretend he was clueless, which might give him a little protection at least. "Father, you know me. I'm a cautious soul. I advise people to stay away from the shadows and the dark, and I try my best to do the same. So sometimes I can be a little exaggerative of risk." I grimaced and pushed the disc away from me. "But trust that I am being far less extreme than I should be when I say burn it. Melt it, scratch it, cut it, bend it, break it, dip it the remains in holy water, pray to your God and bury them outside the church grounds, and pray you never see it again." Father Nicholas looked a little bit shocked. "What on earth, John? Can't be that bad. It's a disc, yes, but it's inert. I'd not have brought anything magical, at least not anything magical of power, into the confines of the church." I shook my head. "It's inert for now, but it's a binder, a linking disc from a summoning spell, designed to bring something nasty from the other side and keep it here long enough for it to do its work." Nicholas frowned deeply. "Ah, then we have a problem. You see, this is one of 20 found so far on the bodies of murder victims spanning the last 2 weeks. My fingers convulsed on the edge of the table, and I glanced at the doors to the room. "I see. I think this might be a tad beyond my experience, Father." Nicholas nodded. "I agree. I'll contact everyone I know in the circle and see if I can't—" His sentence was cut off when Mike and another priest burst through the door. Father Alex was a bald man in his mid-30s, with a significant girth to his middle, and usually a happy and friendly smile, which almost always vanished the moment he saw me. "Should have known you'd be here," were his first words before turning to Nicholas. "The main doors of the church are being struck by something that sounds like a battering ram, Father." When the door to the back room we were in was open, I could hear the sound. A thud, thud, thud. It sounded like my blood rushing through my veins. I paused. Perhaps, if I was lucky. I closed my eyes and counted to 3, slowly opening them. I obviously wasn't lucky. It hadn't been a dream. I was still sitting in a church, and I could still hear the thudding sound of something pounding on the doors. It was still 4 in the morning, and I still had a machete tucked in the back of my belt, a machete that my hand reached for instinctively. The duffel bag I'd brought was sitting on the chair next to me. My other hand reached for that. Tonight was going to be a bad night. I could smell that in the air. Thank you all for listening. I have been the Learning Droid. This has been Short Stories with the Learning Droid, and I will see you all in the next video. Bye!